Namaskar, I'm Neil, and I welcome all of you to the sixth edition of our Sherlocking Prelims 2022 Analysis series. Before we begin with the next set of 10 questions, let me just reiterate the basic principles that have enabled us to attempt the first 50 questions. The principles are fairly simple. There are only two basic principles we need to keep in mind. First principle is that this examination is all about paying attention to basic sources and common sense. If you haven't watched the first 5 videos, I will put the link on the top right of the screen, and feel free to go and have a look at what I see as the basic sources for the examination. And when you watch through those first 5 videos, you will start to get a knack of what I mean by the fact that this examination is all about basics and common sense. We'll see the same principles at play in today's video too. The second principle is that an overview of the subjects is going to be far more rewarding to you than in-depth knowledge, because at times the more in-depth knowledge you have in certain sections, the more likely you are to be confused. If you have a broad overarching understanding, it is more likely that you will not get stuck in 50-50 and you'd be decisive in the moment. We have seen a lot of examples in the past 5 videos. We're going to see some more in today's video. So in today's section, we're going to discuss history. Question number 51 to 60 has questions from history. And in my opinion, history this year was uncharacteristically difficult. So much so that I attempted around 93 questions this time. And I have gotten a lot of them correct, given that I also cleared IFOS cutoff. Most of my negatives have come from history, from this section. And most of the questions, also 7 questions I have left, I think out of those 7, 4 or 5 are from this history section. And the reason is really simple. No amount of heuristic, could get you through a trivial question. In trivia, if the examiner is throwing factual questions, I think nothing works in that moment. So then it's a matter of how well you're aware of that trivia, and you need to be confident in your abilities in the moment and believe that if you have read well over the past one or couple of years, and if you're not aware of the trivia that has been spoken about, chances are most of the competition is not aware of the trivia either. It's all about remaining steadfast and calm in the moment, and then instead finding questions that you could attempt and get marks for. I think that is enough of an introduction. Let's start with question number 51. Question number 51 for me was a really straightforward basic question. We covered this theme in polity and also in modern history. So there's an overlap of this question from 2 different sections. We independently read this from both of those areas. It's a fairly straightforward question. Question was, in the Government of India Act 1919, the functions of provisional government were divided into reserved and transferred, right? All of us, every aspirant is aware of this fact. Which of the following were treated as reserved subjects? 4 is subjects diye hue. The question is select the correct answer using the code given below. So essentially, none of the option has all of the above as a possible choice. That means exactly one of these options is incorrect. That means exactly one of these subject was transferred. Question simply here. So first of all, you need to comprehend the question really well. Don't get confused, in the language of the question. Question finally boils down to your understanding of what a transferred subject was. समझ में भी नहीं आया तो कॉमन सेंस से समझने का बहुत सिंपल तरीका is very simple. Way is very simple. Transferred were the subjects that were whose authority were given to the provincial governments. इसका मतलब provincial government was supposed to legislate or was able to oversee that subject. Out of these 4, administration of justice, land, revenue, police, according to, even to common sense, local self-government through principle of subsidiarity was the most likely to have been transferred to the provincial government. Ideally, though, you should have known this because this is a fairly simple fact. Even if you're not aware of the fact, using commonsensical principles, knowing that by principle of subsidiarity, 2 is most likely to have been transferred compared to 1, 3, 4. So the moment you eliminate 2, the moment you become decisive in the fact that 2 was a transferred and not a reserved subject, you arrive at the right answer. So the entire question was pivoted around your understanding of the fact that LSG, local self-government, was a transfer subject. That's all. So again, I would reiterate, the commission is either questioning you on very basic knowledge, or it's a question of logical reasoning, or it's a question that you have to leave. And we're going to leave a lot of questions in coming section. You're going to see it soon. Fairly simple question. Let's move to the second question. Question number 52. In medieval India, the term funum referred to. So I had no idea of this question. I'm really sorry for the noise. My speaker just turned off. So question number 52 says, in medieval India, the term funum referred to. So funum, I had no idea about the term. So ideally, if you have a low risk appetite, if you want to play it safe, leave questions like these. Leave questions like these. I attempted this question and I got it correct because, for one, I have a high risk appetite. I keep reiterating it. And number two, I have exhaustively analyzed previous questions. My analysis tells me that there are certain themes which are often repeated by the commission. One of those themes out of these four, the theme which is most often repeated, and there was also a mains question on the theme, there have been recurrent questions on this theme. The theme is that of coins. I personally have not seen questions on clothing, ornaments, or weapons yet, but I have seen questions from coins. And that is why, since I had a high risk appetite, since I believe that UPSC repeats theme, so I was confident, decisive. I marked B, again turned out to be the right answer. I would just repeat, if you have a low risk appetite, if you want to play it safe, don't attempt a question like this. Skip this altogether. In a paper like this, if you're attempting around 80-85 questions, that's a tremendous attempt. I attempted 93 because I was also targeting IFOS and I have exhaustively analyzed previous questions. So leave it or believe in the fact that themes are repeated, in which case mark B and move forward. Turned out to be the right answer. Right. Question number 53. Question number 53 says, which consider the following freedom fighters, three names given, who of the above were actively associated with the Ghadar party? I skipped this question. I haven't attempted this question in the exam because I was not confident with either. I mean, there was no option which I eliminate and I arrive at one singular option. So I personally skipped it. I encourage people to skip it. There are people sometimes who tell me that you have worked extensively on heuristics. Can you think of a heuristic to solve this question? I have one literal heuristic to at least arrive at 50-50. There is no guaranteed way to solve this question without actually knowing about these names. But there is a tangential heuristic that I might use in, let's say, if I were to attend the exam again and if this question comes again, I might attempt it. What is the heuristic that I'm speaking about? The heuristic is fairly simple. Okay? Look at these three options: B.K. Ghosh, J.C. Chatterjee, and Ras Bihari Bose. For me, this, after came back, looked at my notes, I realized this, J.C. Chatterjee ji were associated with HRA. If you've read well, and if you're lucky in the moment, if you could remember that, J.C. Chatterjee ji was associated with HRA, you can be rest assured that there is less likelihood that somebody who was so actively associated with one association would also be actively associated with another. Okay? Ek bari mein one can only focus on one task at a time. So if he's a prominent figure in HRA, less likelihood that he's also equally actively involved in Ghadar. So by that logic, you can eliminate two. The moment you eliminate two, you arrive at 50-50. At that point in time, you don't have to think about Ras Bihari Bose ji at all. 3 though is correct, without doubt. Now you have to think about Barinder Kumar Ghosh ji. So it is entirely down to you what you want to go with. I can give you another tangential heuristic because it's my job to give you all the tools. Even though I personally skipped this question in the examination hall, but I might attempt it if I were to, go at the exam again. The logic is again fairly simple. The question is, who of the above were actively involved with the Ghadar party? So unless I have a strong reason to accept, unless I'm explicitly aware of the individual who's being spoken about, I will, not consider them as an active part, because the question is not merely, who of the above were had an association with the other party. That would have been a soft statement. To be associated with the party, to be a member of the party is one thing, and to be really actively and to be at the forefront of the activities of the party is another. So using those two tangential logic, using the knowledge that since J.T. Chatterjee ji were associated with HRA, it is less likely that he was also actively associated with Gadar, and then knowing that, actively has a very strong connotation to it. So, it is very difficult for somebody to be actively associated, and if he or she were, you would have known about it. So using that, you can arrive at 3. But even for me, it is too obscure logic. The entire idea of discussing it is to tell you how to analyze such questions. That is what Sherlocking is all about. You have the options in front of you. Can you think of a way to arrive at the right answer? Maybe you don't attempt that question, but the knowledge that you've gained or the approach that you've gained by analyzing that question, that analysis is certainly going to help you in questions to come. Right? Answer was D. I skipped this question. And I have given you both the tools that could somehow enable you to arrive at the right answer. Take your pick if you want to go with it or not. So question number 54. This is a very straightforward, very simple question. Cribb's vision, 1940s as a decade is really important. Whatever has happened in 1940s, as far as Indian independence is concerned, those topics need to be thoroughly prepared. Constituent Assembly would have, so which of the following statements are correct? Correct, dekhniye. The Constituent Assembly would have members nominated by the provincial assemblies as well as the princely states. Galat hai, because members were elected by the provincial assemblies and nominated by the princely state. Again, the heuristic also works like a charm, even if you're not aware of this fact. Ideally, you should have been aware. This is a very simple, straightforward question. But let's say you were not, you forget, you confused. So we have spoken about the dictum whenever there are statements like this, as well as this, or this, but not this. You should at least pay extra attention that there might be a catch. So one should be eliminated. Statement number 2. Any province which is not prepared to accept the new constitution would have the right to sign a separate agreement with Britain regarding its future status. Correct. Answer is B. Very straightforward. Also, heuristically, you can eliminate 1. 2 is commonsensically also correct, and 2, ideally, you should not be employing common sense in a question like this. Right, we arrive at option D, which is the right answer. Let's come to the next question, question number 55. Now, I was also very lucky in this question because I used my lateral knowledge and I was able to get to the right answer. Okay, let me speak about what my approach was. Question was with reference to Indian history, consider the following texts. Okay, 4 texts are given. Which of the above are Jain texts? Again, look at the options. I mean, I always go back to, this fictional character of Harvey Specter from Suits, wherein I think he speaks about the fact that he doesn't play the odds, he plays the man. Something on similar lines. So similarly, for me, in prelims, you don't have to play the questions. You have to play the options because the answer lies with how the options are being set. First, always pay attention to the options instead of focusing on the language of the question. That is secondary. So when you look at the option, you realize there is no option which says all of the above. So that means at least 1 and at max 2 of the given options are incorrect. That is the information you gain as soon as you look at the option. Now I'll see which of the following is the odd one out. I look at Neti Pagaram. I don't know, I have not heard the name. Next is Parishisht Parvan. No idea. Third is Abdan Shatak. Now, this is where the alarm bells start ringing. There are 2 books in NCERT from Fine Arts. One is from 11th, one is from 12th. I very vaguely remember when I'm sitting in the examination hall that Avdans, or howsoever it is pronounced, Avdans were related to Buddhism. I was not 100% confident, but there was this voice which kept telling me that I've read it somewhere. So I came back, I realized I read it in the Fine Arts book. But in the examination hall, I was not certain. My intuition kept telling me Avdan has something to do with Buddhism. And if Avdan has something to do with Buddhism, Avdan Shatak also is more likely to be associated with Buddhism. I still hold on. I look at 4. Trishashti Lakshan Mahapuran. Again, I'm not too convinced. I have not heard of this. So I go with my gut. My gut tells me that 3 Abdan have something to do with Buddhism. I go with that hunch. As soon as I eliminate 3, beautifully so, you arrive at option number B, unambiguously. So my dictum is fairly simple. I don't take a blind guess, number 1. But even if the logic is obscure in the moment, if any logical correlation gets me to the right answer, I'm going to take that hunch. So I had that understanding in the examination. I could vaguely remember that Abdans have something to do with Buddhism. I was not 100% convinced, but using that logic, I was able to straight away arrive at one answer. So I went away with it. Let's say hypothetically, I were in a situation wherein by eliminating 3, I was coming to 50-50. Okay? Then I might have skipped it, because ek to pehle hi, you are not 100% sure. And then you have to again take a second guess. So I avoid being in situations like those. So that was my take on question 55. I arrived at B, again, turned out to be correct. So that is why sometimes reading through lateral texts help if you have time. But I mean, in your first couple of attempts, you don't have enough time on your hands to read through or read widely. So initially, I encourage people to focus on basic sources. And if somehow you're stuck in the cycle for more attempts, then it is always encouraged to read more. And that is certainly going to help you sometimes in questions like these. Let's come to question number 56. Question number 56. I think I last time asked you to leave questions like these for now. I'm going to bundle all these 6-7 questions in the end. And then probabilistically, I'm going to tell you how I marked all 6 or 7 or 8 of these. And I got around 60% of them correct. And I got a net positive. I'm going to speak about it in the last video. For now, if I were to attempt this question on its own merit, I'm going to leave it. Without probability or without probabilistic bundling of all these 7-8 questions, I have no way to solve this, because I have not heard any name at all. And then it's really convoluted. It says none of the pairs, only one pair, only 2 pairs, all 3 pairs. So if you don't want to take the probabilistic bundling route, leave this question. If you want to listen to my take, I'm going to talk about that in the 10th video of the series. Okay, I think the answer to this question is C, because this is incorrect. I think Arya Devji was a Buddhist scholar too. Deegnag ji was also a Buddhist scholar, and Nath Muni ji were a Vaishnav scholar. But I think there was no way you could have known that in the examination hall. I have not met a single person yet in my circle or otherwise who could claim that they knew this sitting in the examination hall. So no worries, leave it or wait for the final video of the series. To question 57. Again, I was able to solve it laterally, tangentially, and based on my P/Q exhaustive analysis. Question 57 says, with reference to Indian history, consider the following statements, and which of the following given above are correct. Okay? One says the first Mongol invasion of India happened during the reign of Jalaluddin Khilji. So I know the timeline. The timeline is simple. So slave dynasty, Khilji dynasty, Tughlaqs, and Sayyids. Okay. So the first Mongol invasion, I could vaguely remember, though I was not 100% sure, but I could remember that the invasion, I think, happened during the reign of Iltutmish, and who belonged to slave dynasty and not to the Khilji dynasty. So this sounded incorrect on 2 counts. One, I did remember reading this somewhere, so the knowledge was at play. And number 2, I know that UPSC tinkers and influence or changes the statements about the firsts. Which was the first? I think we're going to see it in 2019's paper when they spoke about the first Regulatory Commission of India, or they have also spoken about the firsts in different ways. More often than not, they are incorrect. So heuristically also, I was suspicious of statement number 1. And even by basic reading of these dynasties, you know that during Iltutmish's reign, the Mongol invasion happened. So I eliminate 1. As soon as I eliminate one, I arrive at a 50-50. Okay? And I am, nearly 80 to 90% sure. If I were only banking on knowledge for statement number one, I would not have been entirely sure. Because my knowledge, I could not 100% be sure at that point in time. I could vaguely remember that, yes, I think during Iltutmish's reign is when this invasion happened. And also I know that on top of it, that, usually UPSC tinkers with statements like the first regulatory commission, the first invasion, the first this, the first that. So I eliminate one. That is why I eliminate one. I'm stuck with, option B and D. Now I read to them. 2 says, during the reign of Alauddin, one Mongol assault marched up to Delhi and besieged the city. And 3 says, Muhammad bin Tughlaq temporarily lost portions of northwest of his kingdom to Mongol. Now it's a matter of, how you want to see it at that point in time. I could remember not reading 3 for sure, because I think I have personally read extensively on Muhammad bin Tughlaq, because he was an interesting character and interesting king in the history of India. So I backed my knowledge, and I knew that if I've read about Muhammad bin Tughlaq and if I have not read of this fact, there are less chances that it is correct. So I backed my knowledge. For people who have only referred basic sources, it's difficult to make that resolution between B and D. So entirely down to you how you want to approach it. But at least you arrive at a 50-50 situation. I marked B, turned out to be the right answer. But even if you mark D and you take a negative, I would still take it as success, because at least you arrive at a 50-50. It's a process. The challenge is first eliminating the obviously wrong options. One was obviously incorrect. It was very basic. The problem lies wherein if you mark one between A or C, then there's a fundamental problem. Right? So I think that is what my approach was for question 57. Let's come to question 58. Question 58 says, so sometimes the heuristics fail. I keep talking about, how heuristics have an 80% hit rate. This was one of those instances of 20% wherein they get you a negative. I was okay taking a negative. I took a negative in this question. I used word association. Used word association. Look at the question. Question says, with reference to Indian history, who of the following were known as Kulha Dharan? I have no idea. Kulha Dharan, I don't know. I think I must have read the Hindi too. Kulha Dharan, exactly the same. I don't get any additional information. So says, Arab merchants, Qalandars, Persian calligraphists, and Sayyids. I see Kula Dharan sounds like Qalandar. Qalandar, Kula Dharan. Qalandar, Kula Dharan. I make that word association. I mark B. Gets me a negative. Because the right answer is D. And it was entirely factual. The whole point of having this series is to try and find out if you could somehow find the right answer from the given information. From the given information, you can at max arrive at B. Gets you a negative, but of course, 20% of the times you are going to take a negative. So that should be acceptable. If you want to play it safe, then entirely down to you. I attempted this, got a negative, okay with it, because logically I was on the right way. And answer is D. There was no way I could have gotten to D. Nobody could get to D without having known the trivia in the first place. So, I mean, history is the most trickiest of the portions, because specifically this time around, they asked uncharacteristically difficult questions. And, in a lot of questions, you need to know a lot of trivial information. Question 59. Question 59 says, with reference to Indian history, consider the following statements. Okay? 3 statements are given, correct? I think I left this question too. I didn't attempt it in the examination hall. And I'll tell you why I didn't attempt it. And if I were to attempt it now, or if I were sitting in the examination hall now, what would my approach be at this point in time? It says, with reference to Indian history, consider the following statements. Okay? The Dutch established their factories, warehouses on the east coast on lands, no idea. Correct? Common. Alfonso de Albuquerque captured Goa from Bijapur Sultanate. I was sure, for sure, this is correct, because this is an often known fact. We read about this extensively. We should, people, if you are a good aspirant, you should know about the fact that 2 is correct. But with that knowledge, you can only eliminate C. Doesn't get you any further. 3 says, the English East India Company established a factory at Madras on the plot of land. Again, I had no idea who they took the lease from. So I was not sure about 3. I was not sure about 1. I was stuck between 3 options. I had no there was no way I could have made a headway in this question with certainty. And I never take a blind guess. I never take a blind guess. Even in a question like this, I was not taking a blind guess. I was making word association, even though it got me to the wrong answer. Here, I had no headway at all. I left this question. The answer to this question, I think, is 2 and 3. Answer is 2 and 3. I don't think that you could eliminate one in the examination hall with the available commonsensical knowledge. It was really technical in the sense that, why one is incorrect is because Gajapati rulers operated in a different timeline, and the Dutch established their factory, I think, 100 years after Gajapati rulers, their reign ended. And Gajapati rulers are not extensively read in UPSC syllabus from basic sources. For me, this question was to be left. I left this question. If I were to be sitting in the examination hall again, I would again leave this question. No problem at all in leaving it. Answer is B. The only thing that you could work on is in case you are not aware of trivia in the second statement. That is a must-known statement. You should know 2 for sure. It is such a basic statement. Let's come to the final question of the day. Question is, according to Kautilya's Arthashastra, which of the following are correct? Correct. No idea. I had no idea at all. Of course, nobody reads Arthashastra extensively, and nobody, no basic source has such extensive knowledge, at least not in my opinion. So one says a person could be a slave as a result. So for me, it's a soft statement, and commonsensically, statement number 1 goes with the contemporary morality of that time. Okay? Ki, you get punished, you become a slave. Number 2, if female slave bore her master's son, she was legally free. Again, it was logically coherent with the contemporary morality of those times. Number 3, if a son born to a female slave was fathered by her master, the son was entitled to the legal status of the master's son. Similarly, again, similar to 2, this was logically coherent to the contemporary morality of that time. So 2 and 3 for me went together, and 1 also was a soft statement. Could be a slave. Could, the word is could, is always, a person is always necessarily a slave as a result only because of judicial punishment, not a statement like that. Soft statement 1 to 3, they go together, go with the contemporary morality from what I know of the times. So I mark D. 90% this answer is, this is correct. There are some people who are giving, other potential options, but I don't think if I know anything about the commission and, from what my understanding of the commission is, I think the answer is certainly going to be D, and that'll be confirmed once the key comes out. So I think, we're done with the 6th video. We have discussed the last 10 questions. So you could see I have left 2 questions from this pool. I have gotten 1 incorrect. And that is why for me, this is the most difficult section of the paper. And it's okay not, attempting a lot of questions from this section if you're not sure, because you have the leeway of leaving 15 to 20 questions. If 7 or 8 of those come from this section, so be it. It doesn't matter. In the end, you have to make sure that you attempt at least 80 plus, because otherwise then you're just playing the odds. It becomes difficult. That is it from this video. I am certainly going to try to finish the series before 1st of January 2023. I hope I'm able to deliver quality on time. I'm certain this has added value to your preparation. In case you have any counter arguments, in case you have any doubts, feel free to engage in the comment section, and I shall see you soon. Also, if you want to know more of my work, go to the description box. I have listed extensively the links to the channels that I'm running at this point in time, and the links to my other posts I have written in the past. Thanks a lot for taking out time, and I'm going to see you soon in the next video. Take care. Bye.